Nintendo Wii's weirdest peripherals, our first VTuber guest, and a study tying video games to mental health in a positive light. It's the LP Podcast. Hello and happy Tuesday. It's the day where I do more talking than playing of Nintendo games, but Nintendo is the topic all the same. And we are going to start with a top 10 list here sourced by SlashGear of 10 of the weirdest controller accessories made for the Nintendo Wii. If you were around in 2007 or even any time since then, you'd understand that the Wii was, well, a huge success, right? And with great gaming success comes great third-party attention. And we'll show you a little bit more about what that means. But many companies were creating their own peripherals for the Wii. Starting here, the Everlast dumbbells. Everlast is a relatively large fitness equipment producer. And the interesting thing here is that these dumbbells were not actually produced in conjunction with their own game like many of the other peripherals we'll talk about. These were more or less just 2-pound weights you could strap onto your Wiimotes in case you wanted to burn an extra, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 calories an hour. Not necessarily the most efficient form of exercise, but hey, I do suppose it's better than nothing. I was not ever aware of these, otherwise this is probably something that I would have been interested in 2007. I was in high school at the time, and I was in sports and looking for any way to, stop being as skinny and, well, weak, for lack of a better term, as I was, and this probably would have been right up my alley. But there you have it. Moving on down the list, the fishing rod. This one's not necessarily, in my opinion, weird. The fishing rod seems like, I don't know, if you were to come to me and tell me to name the most common Wii peripherals, a fishing rod probably would have been one of the first few that I spat out. Just because there are not only standalone games for fishing, right? But there's also a ton of fishing mini games in a host of different Nintendo games. So, interesting, perhaps weird. I don't know if I agree. The billiard cue brings up number 3. This one is also interesting, not one that I was aware of. In fact, it seems kind of strange to me as to like how you would hold it. You've got to press some sort of trigger action, no doubt, on the B button as you shoot. It seems a little bit unwieldy, and it looks to me like there'd be several attachments you could, I don't know, possibly screw and unscrew to change the length in case you need to fit it in the right spots. And maybe you need to play on top of like a table or something, I guess, or you could just be like, swing it around. Don't hit grandma. Moving down the list, the CTA bowling ball. Wii Sports probably spawned this one. Reading the description, Wii Sports was the phenomenon that helped launch the Nintendo Wii. Released alongside the console in 2006, the sports simulation game allowed players to try out several different activities. One of them, of course, being bowling. This is an interesting one. If you remember back in the first, I don't know, a couple of years starting the Wii's launch, people were breaking their TVs. People were chucking nunchucks, quite literally, and Wiimotes into their televisions. And I'd have to imagine that a peripheral like this may have also fallen the same fate. Of course, you see there it does have a nice little wrist strap that I would have never used because I was a delinquent little child and never used the wrist strap for the Wiimote. But hey, perhaps other people were better. Scrolling down, I'm just trying to see if there's anything interesting about it. Styled to look like a real bowling ball, it has all of the buttons you'd find in a normal Wii controller, in addition to finger holes for you to hold it like you would at a bowling alley. Of course, mimicking throwing a ball at speed without a wrist strap could be disastrous. There we go. So, dangerous as well as weird. Moving on down the line here, the Wii Skateboard. This was released for a Tony Hawk's game, I remember. And unfortunately, that game, we'll see if they bring out the title here. Tony Hawk Ride Skateboard Bundle. Yes, Tony Hawk Ride. Didn't sell very well. It wasn't critically received very well either, which is too bad because I love almost everything Tony Hawk. I grew up in the 90s, so as you might imagine, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 were like integral to my coming of age. And being a 90s kid, you almost had to like skateboarding with cartoons like Rocket Power on the scene and everything like that. You were riding skateboards, and I rode skateboards for a long time after that. But the point remains is that this should have been a huge success for someone like me, and frankly, it wasn't. It always felt a little bit too flimsy for lack of a better word. It was built well, and I'm sure it was graded for, 200 pounds or something, far more than my, 10-year-old body could produce. But it just didn't. It's a huge piece of plastic. I don't want to be standing and shifting and doing all sorts of maneuvers on top of it. But I still think it's pretty nifty, all things considered, right? I mean, like making a whole skateboard controller? That's innovative, man. Good for them for producing that. Following down is the Wii Dart. Yes, keeping in line with chucking things at your television screen. Goodness knows that we can't have any semblance of an excess of those sort of peripherals, right? So the Wii Dart, obviously darts, if you've ever thrown one, are not as large as a Wiimote. In fact, there's something closer to a pencil. Being at my desk, you'd think that I would have a pen or a pencil, but I have a chopstick. So it'd be something like this. And then the Wiimote's like significantly thicker. Fascinating. Not something I ever messed around with, but apparently it came out in 2009. According to the manufacturer, the accessory brings real feelings and great fun when playing dart games on the Wii. That's real feelings. Real feelings. This, as well as the Everlast Dumbbell, was not actually partnered with any specific game. But it was often used with the PDC World Championship Darts 2008 and some other mini-games built into larger titles. Oh, next on the list, an inflatable cart. I can only imagine that this would be used for games like Mario Kart. However, it would be relatively, how do we say this, discriminatory in terms of size. Something tells me that I perhaps would not fit in it, maybe not you as well, unless, of course, you're the same size as a 9-year-old boy. Hey, more power to you. All right, you probably can't get on many roller coasters, but you can fit inside the inflatable cart. Anyways, it didn't sell too well, I can't imagine, because I've never seen this. This seems like the sort of thing that would be not super duper popular, but that I would have heard about. Let's scroll down. So it came out in 2010, so 3 years post Wii release. Also, another CTA digital release. Fascinating. They produced a ton of the peripherals. Released the inflatable racing cart for the Wii. This monster of an accessory didn't just provide a steering wheel, but the entire cart, allowing players to sit in it and pretend if they were actually racing. Apparently, it supported up to 250 pounds. You gotta be like a dense child, all right, to not be like too tall to squeeze out of that. Amazing, amazing. Cultivating mass. Truly, this is an American accessory. Anyways, you place the Wiimote in the center of the steering wheel, and you use it very much like the Wii steering wheel that we're all well familiar with. Next, the Wii Zapper. Oh, this one doesn't deserve to be on the weirdest list. This is a relatively innocuous, almost, dare I say, iconic Wii peripheral. I have the most fond memories of using this with Link's crossbow training. And I'm sure that you could use it for many, 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 many others, but it's a clear reference to the NES Zapper, which was a light gun that Nintendo released for the NES. And more than that, light guns are almost like synonymous with Nintendo's history, because prior to them actually producing video games, they produced arcade games. Prior to producing arcade games, they produced these. Well, not this exactly, but a light weapon thing. And they would have bowling alleys, abandoned bowling alleys in Japan would be set up to run the sort of infrastructure required to play this like light zapper game. Super interesting stuff. You should check it out. But yeah, Nintendo's got roots with zappers like this. Shigeru Miyamoto explained that the Wii Zapper concept arrived early on during the development of the Wii, with his team wanting to make it easier for players to hold the controllers for a long time and not get tired. I guess it's easier to hold things like this. What does that say about the world? Oh man. Well, there you have it. Moving down, the CTA. You're gonna hear them plenty more times, it sounds like. Rowing machine, more fitness accessories. If you're not familiar, a rowing machine looks pretty much like this. You stick your feet into those two black straps on the left and right, and you grab onto the handles left and right as well. And there is a string that attaches that handle to the big chunker white thing in the center there. And it provides some level of resistance, and you simulate rowing, like rowing a boat, for lack of a better term. I mean, I think that's what it is. It's like a cardio thing. I've done a non-zero amount of it. When I was in the Army, we actually would spend a good amount of time doing that when it was raining outside and we couldn't go running and stuff. But there you have it. Scrolling down, I can't imagine that this was tagged alongside an official title. No, it doesn't. It doesn't look like it. It was used in Wii Sports Resort for the canoeing mode. That still wasn't exactly a great fit for the product, says the article. And Wii Fit Plus did also have some rowing exercises that perhaps were better suited. Goodness me, though, producing a whole peripheral. Think about the cost that CTA was undergoing there, where it only would be applicable to maybe 2 titles, right? And not even like 2, like, wow, like AAA titles. Like, it's not like a Zelda game where people are going to want to procure this to play it. Like, crazy. CTA put a lot of money into these things. Austin airplane controller stand. Now, it looks like some sort of weird PVC pipe machination, but obviously it's meant to simulate a steering wheel or steering handles for a plane. And I think that's pretty nifty. Probably not super expensive, to be honest with you. And it's not like the Wii had a whole lot of like super realistic flight sims anyways. This would just be a fun way to kind of steer around. And that's pretty nifty. And that rounds out the list. Oh, the top 10 weirdest Wii controller accessories ever made, as according to Slash Gear. Let me know what you think. Did you have any weirder than that? Did you have any of these? Did you enjoy them? I particularly enjoyed that list, and it was fun to walk through a little bit of memory lane and a little bit of some novelty that I was not aware of. Another thing that I wasn't really aware of, oh goodness me, up until a few years back, was the prevalence of what's known as VTubers. If you're not familiar, VTubing is very much like what I do, except instead of having my face or the human's face in the screen, it is an animated persona. Of course, the person's personality and voice are still behind it, as well as all of their physical motions mapped to the character. I've got a guess for you on that very subject. And last week, we talked about juggling responsibilities. We talked about the joys of creating as well as working a full-time job. Well, this week's guest does not only that, but also volunteers their time to moderate a subreddit. This guest is Sinisterpixel, all the way from across the pond. Hey, thanks for joining me.
Oh boy, hi. It's good to be here on your podcast. Very excited to be here.
Well, I know we've tried to iron this out. You've been sick. I've been sick. Lots of things to consider, and it's hard to make time when you've got so many things going on.
Yeah, no, I mean, to be honest, I've kind of lived the last 2 years of my life like this, so this isn't sick. This is default for me now.
It's become the new normal, so to speak.
Oh, that's a phrase that I don't miss hearing.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, harkening back to the joys of 2020, 2021.
Oh, boy.
Well, to kick things off, Sinister, I'd love to kind of start things back at the beginning, right? I kind of briefly touched on what you're doing now, but how did your appreciation, your love for video games in general, first originate?
Well, you're going back, and I'm gonna have to be really vague because I have a really terrible memory when it comes to childhood. But I can kind of tell you where the interest started. So when I was young, and bearing in mind, for anyone listening, I was born in 1994, so we're talking the SNES era right here. So I had an older cousin, and he was pretty much the person who introduced me to video games. I would go to his place fairly regularly. He lived in a different city, so it wasn't like, every weekend or whatever. But he had a Super Nintendo, and every single time I would go there without fail, we would be sitting there playing Super Mario All-Stars or any of the other Super Nintendo games he had, but mostly Super Mario All-Stars and also Super Mario World. And I'd kind of say that's where my interest in video games just sort of first popped up. Just doing those playthroughs with him. I was never good at it. I was always player 2, and he always had to help me with bosses and what have you, especially in Super Mario World. I've got, as much as I love that game, and it's one of my favorite Mario games now, I have fond memories of how familiar are you with Super Mario World? Do you know the music off the top of your head?
I do. Yes, the athletic theme is one of my favorites.
Okay, so do you know, like, the boss music? It starts off with that dinner, dinner, dinner.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
I don't know why. That always used to scare me as a kid. So we'd do the castle, the World 1 castle, get to Iggy's chamber, it would go, dinner, 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 and then it'd be this little demon thing, Lemmy Cooper, just like shuffling, and it always scared me as a kid. He always had to do that boss for me.
That is awesome.
But outside of that, I also grew up watching the Pokemon anime, original Indigo League, and I remember finding out that, wait, that's also a video game? I had some friends who played the Pokemon games, and while I did play the original Gen 1 and Gen 2, my friends' copies, I actually didn't own a Pokemon game till Generation 3.
Ruby and Sapphire.
Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah, Ruby was my first Pokemon game. Torchic was my first starter, and actually, I kind of have. If we want to go on a tangent, I have a really funny story about my Torchic from Pokemon Emerald.
Yeah, please go. Absolutely.
Okay, so how much do you know about competitive Pokemon? Just off the top of your head.
Not a whole lot, to be honest with you.
Okay, so basically, in competitive Pokemon, one thing you want is like a good nature for your Pokemon. Blaziken is a fast physical attacker, so you normally want to run Adamant or Jolly on it. And in Generation 6, Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, I decided, hey, I want to get a competitively viable Blaziken. And I was like looking at it, I decided to go for a Jolly nature. I transferred my original Blaziken from Emerald all the way up to Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, and I found out, I had no idea of this as a kid, that Blaziken, which had like 3 fire moves on it, because I didn't know, you know, what move diversity was at the time, was a Jolly nature. So yeah, also ended up becoming the father of my competitive Blaziken, or great-great-great-grandfather or something. I can't remember what it was in the end.
Wow, that is awesome.
Sorry, go on.
No. I'm just commenting. I love it. This is the linear sort of progression from your childhood game right into it's spawning offspring and you're continuing to use them.
Yeah, no. So going back to the original question, I'd probably say like the combination of the Pokemon anime and just my cousin when I was a kid, probably the reason I'm so into video games now. That, and I was a social outcast, which, you know, growing up in the 90s, 2000s, that sealed your fate as someone who played video games.
No, I completely commiserate with you on that. Playing video games, you had to find other people that played video games, and sometimes that wasn't always the easiest thing in the world. So it's nice to know that you had, you know, at least family that were familiar with it. Yeah. Quick question too, randomly, because I also grew up, I was born about the same year as you, and also, you know, spent my childhood watching the Pokemon anime. When did that air for you over in the UK? Like, what time of day was that shown at?
It was normally like after school. We'd get to watch it. So when I was younger, because both my parents worked full time, they weren't always able to pick me up after school. So I had like a childminder, or like, I guess like a bit, I don't know if you use that term in the US, but basically it's like a babysitter, but I would be at their house. They would take care of me until my parents could pick me up from them. And I was there. There was a few other kids who came there a few times a week. And she'd always put on cartoons, you know, like Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and all those sorts of things. And I can't remember what channel it was, but one of those channels would air Pokemon about 4:30 every day after school. And like that's pretty much when I would watch it. And they didn't air them in order, because this is back before, you know, TV shows actually got aired in order. So, you know, they get aired in a random order. Actually, interesting fact, do you know the banned episode of Pokemon with the giant tentacruel?
Was that the one that was causing seizures?
No, the giant tentacruel, I think it got banned short. I think the episode was banned because he destroyed a tower. It was supposed to be like a Godzilla kind of thing, just with a giant tentacle. And I'm pretty sure it was banned in the US. I've actually seen that episode broadcast live in the UK. I don't know if it was actually banned here. I can't find the episode now, so I think it was banned later. But I have actually seen that broadcast on television before.
Wow, one of the few, man. That's excellent. Unfortunately, my memory, even worse than yours, it would seem, because I do not recall. But I'm glad that you at least had that available to you after school, because in my own experience, I remember having to wake up at the crack of dawn to watch it, because it would air at something ridiculous, like 5:30 in the morning. And if I wanted to watch it at all, that was the only opportunity I had.
Okay, and I guess it's like, I mean, to be fair, this was, if you had one of those fancy VHS players, one of those fancy VCRs, which you could set a timer to record on, you could have just taped it.
There we go. That's ingenuity.
But I guess you don't really have a time machine now, but hey, Netflix exists now, and they have like everything.
No, it's true. It's true. Speaking of Netflix, I saw that the Super Mario Brothers movie recently made its way on there and is already the #1 streamed movie of 2023. Can you believe that?
Shit, hang on. I'm totally not checking Netflix right now, because I did not know that.
Yep.
I'm totally not on Netflix right now.
Well, I encourage you to. It's have you seen it before? Did you see it in theaters?
I have seen it. I saw it in theaters twice, actually. I'm searching for it. I've searched for Mario. I don't think it's on Netflix in the UK. However, I do have the option of watching something called The Last Hours of Mario Biondo, which is a 3-episode docuseries.
Interesting. Well, hey, okay. A consolation prize, perhaps.
There we go.
Well, Pixel, kind of rounding it back out, and I appreciate the context around your upbringing and how video games sort of, eventually played a role in that. You've taken that love, that interest for video games, and worked it into, part of your everyday life still as an adult, making it so far as to be a consistent hobby, right? You stream, you create content for YouTube. What was the first decision, I suppose, to make that jump from just something you did on your own for fun to something that you shared with other people?
So, here in the UK, we have primary school, which you do from the age of like 4 to 10. Then you go into secondary school from like 10 and up. In secondary school, I had a couple of friends who like both had YouTube channels, and this is circa 2006. Like, YouTube was still very new at the time. It wasn't even owned by Google yet, I don't think. They both had YouTube channels. One of them was uploading like Sonic Adventure content, like they were uploading like mods and things like that. And the other one was posting Gmod content. Then later on in 2007, they started posting Team Fortress 2 content when that came out. And they encouraged me because I had like a fleeting interest in animation back then. They were encouraging me, you should put your animation stuff on YouTube, which I didn't really have an interest in doing, but I made a YouTube channel regardless, and I've just upload like random crap on there. This was like an old YouTube channel, so it's not the one I currently post on. I've had like 3 YouTube channels in my time.
What sort of random crap are we talking about?
So, it was like mostly gaming stuff. So it basically, like, a lot of it was just like me playing a game on an emulator, and then like I put some background music in there and like I'd upload it. It was like the most low effort stuff you can imagine. Like, you had the unregistered Hypercam 2 watermark in the corner. Like, that's how low tier we are talking. The color grading and the bitrate was awful because like I was editing in Windows Movie Maker because I was on Windows XP at the time. Then like eventually I found a few Let's Players, and I started like doing Let's Plays of like Super Mario World ROM hacks was actually like what I got started in. And I started doing Let's Plays of that. Eventually I kind of got bored of it and I tried some other stuff. Didn't sync. I kind of went back and forth on my YouTube channel. eventually led to me making a new YouTube channel, and then a newer YouTube channel after that, when which ended up being Sinisterpixel, and this is kind of where I am now. So I started this when I was like 12 or 13.
Wow.
So it's been a long time.
So, I mean, it's been a long time coming for certain. Well, that's excellent, number one, that you've, I guess, had the opportunity to sort of pursue that. And number two, that you've been, I guess, confident this whole time that it's what you enjoy. So I think that's awesome. Now, you've made one significant change, at least from the looks of it, aesthetically. You are a VTuber. What was the decision to go that route like? Because there is, you know, a financial barrier to entry, as I understand it. They're not the cheapest things in the world to produce. So how did you get into that?
So long story short, you can thank resting bitch face. So I started off making content, as a lot of people do, as like the disembodied voice when doing commentary over gameplay, you know, like the old school traditional video let's plays. When I got into streaming, I wanted to start using like a camera to record my reactions and stuff. That's why I just whacked my mic. I don't know if that came through or not. But I wanted to start doing face cam, record my reactions. And it was good, but what I was finding is I was watching through the VODs, and unless I had a really big reaction, if I was just focusing on the game, I was just like, do you know the emoji which is just like a straight line from mouth? I was just like that, like constantly. I was like talking, and if you watch my streams, you know that my voice doesn't like, I don't know if modulate is the right term. Like I talk fairly monotone a lot of the time. So it wasn't, I was getting really self-conscious about that it seemed like I was constantly bored, where it's like, well, no, I just pull this face when I'm focusing on a video game. So VTubing was like kind of like a happy medium, right? Like no one really notices so much if a VTuber avatar is resting bitch face, because you can just tweak a few settings and your resting bitch face is just a small smile every single time. Okay. And that's kind of like, as for like cost of barrier for entry, I'm still using my first model, which is the first model I got, and it did cost, I don't want to say it didn't cost a lot, but it didn't cost a lot compared to some of the other VTuber avatars you see there. So my avatar doesn't have any toggles or anything. It is literally just straight tracking my face. I have no emotes, no toggles or anything on like that. The person who drew my avatar is a person called Tabby, or she goes by Tabracadabra. She actually does quite well on TikTok and YouTube now, but she's an artist. She'd never actually done a VTuber avatar before, and I asked her, because I really loved her art style at the time, and at the time my profile icon was drawn by her. I asked her if she wanted to help me make it, and she was interested, because it was her first model and I would essentially be the test run. She didn't charge me too much for it. I think for the VTuber art, I paid like $200 all in at the time. I don't know if I should be talking about how much I paid for the art, but there's that. As for rigging, that was done by a rigger I originally found on Fiverr. She's called Toto Chomp. And she has like 3 tiers of rigging, and I just paid for like the basic rigging. And it's a bust up avatar, so like if I ever like lift my avatar above like the waist, I just like, there's nothing. It just stops. There's no ass, there's no legs, there's nothing. There's actually not even any hand on that avatar.
Interesting.
So that's what, yeah, there's no hands. So that's why a lot of the art I have commissioned, you'll see there's inconsistencies. In some pieces of art, I'm wearing gloves, and other pieces of art, I'm not.
Well, what's canon? You're the creator. Is it gloves or no?
I like to think the gloves are canon.
Okay.
In fact, like my current profile picture, it was drawn by Lee Chrisu. She asked me she asked me like for specific things. Her original draft didn't have any gloves, and I just said, can you just like put some like skin tight like gloves on there? So the gloves are canon, like to me, but it's like a 50-50 shot. I kind of just say, hey, look, I don't have any reference art for this avatar, which is something I really need to fix. So I pretty much tell people, here's like some art other people have drawn, just you can kind of use this for reference.
Hey, I mean, clearly it's work. You seem to have gotten a number of quality hours out of it over the years, and you mentioned that it's the like the first version. Are there plans for a second version coming up, or is that something you thought about?
Yes, I'm on the wait list for a new avatar. If you've watched any of my recent streams, I actually do have a donation goal, which is about $1,000. That's in pounds as well, so that's going to be a little bit more than $1,000. And it's something where I'm not expecting people to donate, and it's something where I can very well like pay for the avatar myself. But like, you know, it's like one of those things like, oh hey, if people want to contribute, they can. But yeah, my next avatar, the artist I'm speaking to, she has said that it's going to be upwards of $1,000, so that's just how much I'm trying to raise. And like, this avatar is going to be one which I hope to use for even longer than my current avatar, because it's going to have like all the bells and whistles, and I'm also like getting, it's called like a naked base, so basically if I want different outfits and what have you, the artist can just draw more and I can add it to the existing avatar. So it's one of those ones where I can just keep on upgrading and adding on to it over time. There we go.
That's excellent. It's a base to sort of build up from and improvise and adapt as you see fit.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, but well, I'm on their waiting list right now, and based on their current pace, they estimate that they'll be able to start working on it in like June. So we've got like 6 months at the very least, and even then, I'm expecting the actual work that she does to take a couple of months, just because of the complexities in it. So I'm going to be using 1.0 for quite a while, but I'm fine with that.
Many more streams to come with 1.0. So doing that, you know, the streaming, the creating, working full time and moderating a subreddit, it's a lot of responsibility, right? It's got to occupy a lot of hours of your time. How do you balance all three while still maintaining maybe some semblance of a personal life?
Hard work and determination.
There you go.
I've always said that if you really love doing something, you're always going to be able to find the time to do it. Or not always, but most of the time you can find the time for it. And I think it is all about just knowing how to balance your life. So I'm very lucky in the job I'm working right now, it's really ideal for me. So for those who don't know, I work like IT service desk, and I work like a global 24/7 service desk. So my desk has different shift patterns. And here's the thing, I found out about being a night owl. No one likes evening or like night shifts. No one likes them at all. So I just, like, when I joined that company, I said, hey, can I have fixed hours in the evening or overnight? Because like, I know not many people like doing those hours, and I don't go to sleep until like 4 in the morning anyway. So like, it would work for me. And they were more than willing to give me that. So I work from home as well. So pretty much my schedule is I wake up around midday or 11 a.m. I'll like do whatever I need to do until 6 p.m., whether that be streaming or like just doing my regular stuff outdoors or editing or what have you. I'll go to work, I'll finish up at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and then I'll just get ready for bed. So like, pretty much my morning and evening are all condensed into one, which gives me a lot more time and a lot of flexibility to do this stuff. And as for moderating the subreddit, I mean, you're a moderator on the subreddit now. I don't know if you had a peek at the auto mod code. I actually don't know if you have access to that. I should check that. But when I first started moderating the subreddit, back when Raspberry was like the main moderator, Raz had already done a lot of configuration to the auto mod. A lot of the subreddit's content was just already getting moderated automatically. And you've seen it, right? Like, when you go on Reddit, you check the queue, and there's like a ton of stuff that the auto mod will have just flagged for us while we haven't been around.
Mm-hmm.
So that just makes it so much easier. And since I've been moderating the subreddit as well, and since Raz has also stepped down, I've made a couple of tweaks to the auto mod to get it to run even more efficient, which is fun because I still don't fully understand how to code it. So every single time I submit a change, I'm like, please don't fuck anything up.
Did I break it? Oh no.
No, like literally, I have like a private subreddit that I sometimes like fool around on. And I like just to mess around with the auto mod on, and I remember so we have like closure reasons attached to the auto mod, and I remember when I changed all the closure regions to make them bigger, like have more information in them to help the submitter know why their submission was removed. I remember I made like a big post where like the title was "You don't see this," and like the body read, "If you see this post, it doesn't exist, you saw nothing," and it had been removed like 10 times by me just testing out all different removal reasons.
That is excellent.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's like that's actual like testing I did to make sure everything was working as planned.
Well, I think it's good to do that, because clearly the subreddit runs quite well, and you're no doubt a major reason why.
I mean, it also helps that the subreddit isn't like as big as some other subreddits. Like, you've got subreddits like the Twitch subreddit, like, which isn't like a busy subreddit, but I feel like even if we got to the size of like r/Twitch, it would become a lot harder all of a sudden to moderate that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The size of it is a relatively niche sort of community filled with mostly, I feel like, decent people and kids. So
yeah, like people are really good at like reporting stuff that the auto mod doesn't catch as well. So yeah.
Well, from the sounds of it, your answer, it seems that kind of beholding yourself to a schedule, right, and having a job that's fitting in quite perfectly, for lack of a better word, with that, is kind of how you've been able to maintain this, and I think that's awesome. We should all be so lucky. So with that said, outside of perhaps finding the perfect job that can, fit into that schedule, what sort of advice would you give to perhaps a young Pixel looking to get into this, or someone who is just getting started?
So I recently made I recently like went on a little bit of a monologue in this in a stream, which I actually made into a short, where I basically said, if you want to stream games, it is basically just playing a video game with extra steps. Like, you can configure OBS in 20 minutes. You can pull a free stream overlay from online, or like pay for like one on Etsy, or just throw one together in like a piece of editing software like GIMP or something. And what I will also say is, I think a lot of people go into this expecting to be, stunning, amazing, like they're gonna upload a video and it is going to be the best video on YouTube and it's going to get like 1 million views in like 5 seconds, and just abandon your ideas of perfectionism, because I have been doing this off and on over different channels for over 15 years, and like my recent Super Mario Bros. Wonder video, I think is like the best video I've ever produced. But I can go through that, and like every 2 minutes I can pause the video and say, I should have done this, I should have done that, that take could have been read better, that could have been... You're always going to find a flaw in what you do. So let go of any ideas of perfectionism you have. Just do it because you love it. And again, with growth, I think these days you see YouTube channels with like 1 million subs and what have you, and especially, I don't know how long you've been doing I don't know how long you've been using YouTube for, but I remember it used to be that if you had like 10k subs, you had a lot of subs, but like now that's still for a lot of people, considered kind of small fry. So I think a lot of people get like false ideas of where their projection should be. The way I've always said it is, let's say you have 100 subscribers, right?
Okay.
Think about it this way. You are hosting a show that an audience of 100 people have chosen to attend. So like, think about that in like, how would you actually react if you were going to say something and 100 people were sitting there listening to you? You wouldn't think it's only 100 people. You'd think, holy shit, it's 100 people.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
And I think, you know, you need to just kind of be aware of how that scales. And you know what? If you do what you love and you're good at it, the growth comes.
So in summarization, and correct me if I'm wrong, sort of, you know, do it out of love, out of enjoyment, and sort of, you know, temper your expectations. Don't go into it too, well, too terribly focused on what success may look like. Just enjoy it.
Do it, yeah. Just do it because it's fun. Enjoy the ride. It's about the journey just as much as the destination.
Well, Pixel, I think that you'd probably inspired me if I wasn't already doing it by hearing that, and hopefully you've inspired other people who are considering getting going, because anyone can do it. You're right. It is just playing a video game with extra steps. So if you're listening and you're considering getting going, do it. Why not? And on that note, Pixel, was there perhaps someone that inspired you to get going? I know you mentioned that you started way back when with your peers in school, but did you ever look up to any specific creator or creators and think, hey, they're doing it, I want to do it too?
There is a specific creator. I mean, I've had like a few inspirations over the years. I can like list them all, but there is a specific creator who I think was like my main influence, and that was Proton John. I don't know if the fact that I used to do ROM hack Let's Plays gave that away, because obviously he used to do that as well. But he even inspired my hiatuses from content creation, apparently. But like, I'd say Proton John was like the main reason I got into it, and I really love the evolution of his content with his streams. And when he does do video content, I like how he structures his video content. As well as that Chugga Conroy, because like obviously I feel like you can't have Proton John without Chugga Conroy, right? They're like two peas in a pod almost.
Right. Well, I think that's a great response. Go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
No.
I'd say probably like one of my most recent, I say recent, I've been watching them for a few years. One of my most recent inspirations, I don't know if this comes off in the Super Mario Bros. Wonder video, is Alpharad. I don't know if I feel like that comes off a little bit in the Super Mario Bros. Wonder video, because I really love his video structure. His videos are really engaging, and it seemed like a natural path for me to take, because I'm streaming content, and then I can make really nice condensed short form videos with a lot more consistency in my commentary and what have you. Mm-hmm. And then just to throw a wild card out there, Austin McConnell, who is not a gaming channel, he's a filmmaker who's done like all sorts of like different like sorts of videos. So like right now he's taken a bunch of superheroes which have fallen into the public domain, and he's making his own cinematic universe out of it called the Super Zeros. But before that, he used to do like random things like just like interesting like bits of information. So he made a video talking about what would happen if your parachute failed, or like talking about how ink cartridges are a scam, and he just does all these random videos. The production value is really good in them, and I think in terms of production value, even if he doesn't make gaming content, it's a good inspiration. And to hand off a small content creation, the Skeleton, formerly known as Sir Crackerbolt, who is a friend of mine who I met in college. We've collaborated a few times. And honestly, anyone listening, go check out his content. It's the Skeleton. You'll know it. His profile icon is a skeleton eating popcorn. and he's just like so fucking funny. He's one of my best friends as well. So he's a huge inspiration. I bounce a lot of ideas off him as well.
Well, I love that, and I think that something you kind of touched on there is important, and that's to continue finding inspiration, right? To continue watching perhaps others engage in the craft and seeing maybe you can gain entertainment from it, but also you might be able to learn some things too. And I think that's excellent.
Yeah,
Great recommendations.
I think if you've been doing content for a long time, it is a good idea for you to not stagnate and do the same thing for like forever. If you think about some of the old school like YouTube channels, like okay, think about Fred. Do you remember Fred?
Oh goodness, yes. Yep.
He did the same thing for years, and eventually got his Nickelodeon show, but his content started falling off in terms of interest. And you see that with like a lot of other old YouTubers, like there was Smosh, Ray William Johnson, who just all kind of did the same thing for years, and people got bored of them. And I think if you're doing this long term, you need to be willing to adapt. Like, you don't have to give up like the core of what you make, but be willing to adapt, try new things, and what have you. Particularly
if you want to turn it into a business, right? You need to be staying relevant, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those people who I mean, if I got to do this as a full-time job, that'd be fantastic. I'd love that if I could sustain myself on, money I make from streaming or content creation. I've just kind of accepted that's probably not on the cards for me, but this is just something I do for fun. And hey, you know what? That's all I care about. But I guess if you are out there wanting to like make a big thing of it and maybe make it your full-time job, because I know a lot of people do, and I know a lot of people, even smaller creators, can be successful in that. Like, yeah, just be willing to adapt, change up your content. Don't get stuck doing the same thing, because you'll probably end up getting bored of it as well.
Sage advice, my friend, sage advice. Well, Pixel, unfortunately, we are up on time, but I greatly appreciate you hanging out. I'd love to hear you let the people know what you're doing and where they can find you.
Right, yeah, so I am on YouTube, youtube.com/Sinisterpixel. You can also follow me on Threads at the same handle, that's Sinisterpixel, that's where I post all my updates. Currently, I'm doing a live stream of a Nuzlocke of Pokemon Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, well, Omega Ruby specifically. And in the future, I'm planning on doing a few more challenge videos, challenge streams as well. I have a couple of things planned, and a few things. I stream most of the time 3 times a week, and I upload whenever I remember to. But yeah, you can watch my streams. I've got like hours and hours and hours worth of VODs there, so I've got tons of back catalog content if you just want to turn it on in the background and dissociate to my voice.
There you have it. That is Sinisterpixel. You can find all the links to what he described down below in the description. Thanks again, Pixel. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Many thanks again to Sinisterpixel for joining me. Please go check him out at the socials listed below in the description, and also check out Super Mario Run. They've got a collaboration, limited time, that is, with Super Mario Bros. Wonder. If you're not familiar, Super Mario Run is a mobile phone game. It's relatively simple. You can download it. It's free. I think there are some microtransactions that you can play on it, but essentially you just tap the screen and Mario jumps. And it's a really nifty thing as well, because you can earn platinum points towards your My Nintendo account, which you can then redeem for whatever you can redeem platinum points for. You could get things like t-shirts or pins, or even special emblems for use in your Switch console. So, very cool. Moving on, another update to F-Zero 99, a new Christmas little holiday software update, actually releasing a week ago exactly today, so barely fitting within the threshold for this discussion on this podcast. But F-Zero 99, I've spoken about it a few times, a fun game, a great game. If you're into racing games, you're probably into F-Zero 99. Check out the update. Next, wow, Now, this one took me by surprise. So first-party Nintendo Switch physical games are ditching ESRB ratings in Southeast Asia. Pretty fascinating. And I'm curious to see why exactly that's the case. So Nintendo is breaking away from the practice of including those ratings on physical Switch games in Southeast Asia, which has apparently been disliked by many in the Nintendo community. The change will be implemented with the release of another code Recollection, followed by all first-party titles in Southeast Asia, and will involve removing the logo and replacing the Nintendo of America barcode with a Nintendo Company Limited barcode. Fascinating. It doesn't actually provide any level of insight into why they would want to do that. I think the ratings are honestly a good thing. One, for parents, right? Procuring things for their children. You don't want to get something unwittingly. I mean, it's one thing to just purchase something randomly, and then that's a little bit, shall we say, negligent. You should probably do a little bit of research onto what exactly you're buying your child, but I think the rating does help with that research because it offers you like, okay, this is rated T for teen. Why is it rated T for teen? Let me look it up. If it's something rated E for everyone, you probably don't need to look up too much about it. So I can see it on both hands. Either which way, we will have to see how this plays out, how it is received, but it's a significant change all the same. Speaking of significance, Tears of the Kingdom. A game I've mentioned maybe once or twice in this podcast ever is getting some more recognition, or at least several of the people involved in it. Hidemaru Fujibayashi, and I may have not pronounced that properly. If so, I am sorry. He is essential to the success of the Nintendo Switch. Currently the director for mainline games like all of The Legend of Zelda, including Tears of the Kingdom, working in lockstep with Eiji Aonuma, its longtime producer who directed several of its flagship titles. He has been nominated on the Variety 500, or listed on the Variety 500, which is essentially a grouping of 500 influential people in tech. So it's not necessarily like an award, it's not necessarily anything like super duper official, but it is an excellent, really, piece of recognition for someone who's clearly worked very hard to produce some very, very, very good things for Nintendo fans like you or I. So I think this bodes well, one, for his sense of pride, and two, for continued, shall we say, awareness for what Nintendo's doing, right? And that's only going to be a good thing going forward. And speaking of awareness, something that I've tried to shine awareness on a number of times on this podcast. We talked about it with Laughing Boy LP a couple weeks back. We talked about it with Super MC Gamer. I think we even talked about it with Sinisterpixel. It comes up a lot, and that's mental health. All right, what's a facet of that? It's depression, it's anxiety. So a study was ran on cognitive trainings using video games. So according to this article, this study was focused on cognition, which affects activities like memory, perception, problem solving, and decision making. And while the researchers mostly focus on affective symptoms, like the emotional aspect, depression also results in cognitive dysfunctions like persistent negative thought, self-criticism, concentration. You understand, right? The whole kit, kat, and caboodle. So the game they specifically used for this study was none other than Super Mario Odyssey. Unfortunately, it's not a game that I've ever gotten to play, but I desperately want to, and I will do a Let's Play of it here probably in the next year on the channel, sometime in 2024, we'll say. Playing the game relied on processes dependent on the hippocampus, the part of the brain involved in cognitive tasks. Therefore, it could potentially influence cognitive performance, which depends on that very same brain region. In comparison to the other traditional methods like Cogpack program and medication with psychotherapy, the Mario group had a significant decrease in cognitive depressive symptoms. Now, it should be noted too, there were actually only 46 participants, so it's a relatively small sample size. And one more thing to note in post-testing, the Mario group demonstrated more selective improvements and did not do significantly better than traditional methods in terms of memory performance. The conclusion, the article here, is that 3D games could be a cost-effective treatment used in conjunction with regular treatment and therapy. So they're not saying, play Mario and, ditch your medication and stuff, but perhaps the combined power, by our powers combined, good things can happen. And I've long thought that, to be honest with you. It's funny too, because I know that a lot of people have tried to tie video games in to the opposite side of that, right? Like, oh, you're depressed because you play so much video games, and I think there might be some like validity to perhaps what you're neglecting if you're just playing video games and you're neglecting like you're not taking showers, all right? You're not going outside, you're not eating right, you're not talking with your friends or family. Then yes, but I do think that it's perhaps not completely understood, both, you know, video games and mental health. And I think that this article is a positive step in the right direction to further evaluate ways that they could be used positively. And I think that's excellent. I also think you're excellent because you watched this whole thing. And that will do it for the week in Nintendo news. I was your host, LP. I do this every week, and I hope I get to see you again next time.